Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The End Credits, the podcast where two brothers discuss their thoughts on a film of their choosing. I'm Dominic,
I'm Jonathan.
and so for this next set of films that we're going to be looking at, we're going to watch, we're going to be mainly focusing on Wes Anderson films. And we're going to do something a little bit different with these next set of films. So just stay tuned for that and how that turns out. And we're going to just try some things.
Being experimental, basically.
Yeah. And we're going to just see how that goes. And today we're going to be talking about Wes Anderson's stop motion animation comedy. That's what
Stop
it is.
motion animated comedy.
Yeah, what a hard it's such a distinct and different kind of genre. Stop motion animation comedy. Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, this was released November 13th in 2009 with a runtime of 1 hour and 27 minutes. Like we said before, it's a stop motion animated comedy. There you go.
Mouthful.
Obviously directed by Wes Anderson, since we're doing this whole series with him.
Mhm.
And it stars George Clooney, Meryl Streep, Jason Schwartzman, Bill Murray, and Owen Wilson.
Wow.
By the way, you look unbelievably beautiful tonight. You're practically glowing. Maybe it's the lighting.
I've been in this town so long and back in the city. I've been taken for lost and gone and unknown for a long, long time.
After 12 years of bucolic bliss, Mr. Fox breaks a promise to his wife and raids the farms of their human neighbors, August, Bunce, and Bean. Giving in to his animal instincts endangers not only his marriage, but also the lives of his family and their animal friends. When the farmers force Mr. Fox and company deep underground, he has to resort to his natural craftiness to rise above the opposition. I thought I saw this movie before we watched the podcast.
Me
but
too, yeah.
Maybe I only saw it like in passing, or I've seen the trailers, or I knew of it.
Me
But
too.
when watching it was like completely different than what I thought it was going to be in my head.
Right, and not only did I feel like I saw the movie as well, I also thought that I read the book years ago, back in like grade school.
Really?
Distinctly remember the cover, and maybe that's all I remember. And maybe I didn't actually like pick it up and read it, but I distinctly remember the cover of Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I thought that I had read it, but maybe not.
I don't even know if I knew it was a book until
Oh, really? Oh,
until it
man.
actually started. I said based on the book or
Mhm.
whatnot, and like now looking back, I can definitely see it could be just because they told us it was based on one, but it does seem like a adaptation from a book that's maybe just a little fast, where they took out bits and pieces just so the movie could be a movie. A bunch
Yeah.
of different series has done that. It's
Right.
never going to be the same. When you read it or whatnot.
Mhm.
And I had that sort of vibe
Okay, yeah.
when watching this movie.
I will say though, like despite the fact that maybe they skipped through some things and it went a little fast, I think that this movie for 2009 has aged remarkably well. If like,
Probably.
yeah, I was gonna say like if you agree with me, I would definitely say that this film doesn't even feel like a day old. Like since it's been released. I was
That's
like,
true. I totally understand. Like with like its comedy bits and everything, it seems very clever for a 2009 style. Maybe like
well, not necessarily that. I guess what I felt is that it doesn't feel like there's a presence of time, like there's a presence of decade.
Okay.
Like in movies, like in 2008, for example, or like 2009, or God forbid, 2012. Like you can just feel the sense of like the time, like you know what decade this is set in.
it's probably has to also do with like it's because it's animated,
Right.
and it's not stuck inside. Okay,
Like real life, and you can see places
Yeah,
or
like-
people.
yeah, exactly. Like what they're wearing,
Right.
the clothing they're around, and this is like okay, you can suspend your disbelief, sort of, for whatever world they take you in, like
Yeah.
talking animals, sure.
I guess maybe the one thing that kind of dates it, possibly, if you want to consider this, is just the animation / stop motion style, because that was big during that time. That kind of the
Puppet animation, kind of.
yeah / I guess claymation sort of feel.
Okay.
So I feel like that kind of that like era of those kind of films were big around that time, if I'm not mistaken, because I felt like that there was other like films like that, like even like Coraline as well. I don't know if that came after or before, but those kind of films were pretty big. So that's maybe the one thing that dates the movie.
I don't know if it feels like it dated it for me, only
It's
because
not a bad
like,
thing. I'm just saying.
I guess I see the sense where like it's been around for a longer period of time. You
Right.
know, sure, like you said, you know, a bunch of films at that time, you know, try to use that style probably.
Mm.
But I guess I never thought of it when I watched it. You know, it's like, oh yeah, it's from that quote unquote era or whatnot.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because, you know, I didn't watch it during when it first came out or whatnot, and I guess I never thought anything of it.
Right. And but like as we were watching it, it felt so modern. Like you felt like it could have been something that came out recently.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I totally understand. What like shocked me was just how short it was. Like I feel as maybe because we haven't watched like an hour and the 30-minute, you know,
Yeah, it's been
mark films.
Right.
Like we've been watching 2 hour,
Two and a
2 hour,
half.
yeah, like you know, going to almost. I could see us watching a 4 hour film, but this one was like an hour and a half or whatnot, and
I
this
don't know,
is like
went by quickly.
yeah, super quick. I don't know how you felt. Like, did you feel like it ended, or like its time span was a little bit too quick?
No, I don't think so. I would probably say, I think the first thing that I would want to say is that the events, there were so many events that took place in such a short amount of time that it was kind of crazy that they crammed in so much in the hour and 44 minutes. Is that what it was?
It's an hour and 27 minutes.
Oh man, even quicker than I thought it was. For me, I felt like that they put so many like different. They gave us so many different moments in such a short amount of time, and I felt like in the beginning it was overwhelming. But as you continued onward with the film, you started getting used to its rhythm. Like you were here at one point, and then you're here at the next. But I kind of like that for this film. I usually like films that take their time. I'm a fan of slow storytelling. That's why I like Western films a lot, because a lot of them are very like drawn out, and you really have to take your time with the scenes. And in this one, it actually had like Western elements, which is surprising, but it was very quick, and we were like in one moment and then we were in the next. And you even mentioned it as we were watching too, like when we had like the moment when Mr. Fox and Kylie were like raiding one of the farms, and like they went, it was like broken down into 3 phases, I believe. And the first phase was really like quick, and then we were right on to the second phase. Like I thought there was going to be a little bit more time in between, and you thought so as well, and there clearly wasn't.
A few beagles as we discussed, but we're ready for that.
Yeah. Back in the old days, didn't we used to do a thing where if somebody saw a wolf, we would all...
Wolf? What wolf?
It was definitely like I agree with you. Like in the style of pacing, it was definitely different from your like traditional.
Oh yeah,
like probably story. I want to say maybe even animation. You know, because you see a lot of Pixar films. You know, there's usually like a rhythm there that you can feel.
Right.
And this one very much like broke that rhythm because, like you said, when he did like part A to his master plan and then jumped it right into part B, I was like, this feels weird because usually in that space of time, something happens to like, okay, are we going to understand why he did this, or what was the consequence to this, or like, are we going to actually feel something go wrong yet? And it kind of like puts you on edge, or like I was on edge. Like, okay, so he went to part A, part B.
So quickly.
Yeah. Isn't something supposed to be like hard, I guess? It seemed too easy. And it's kind of like I said, I put me on edge because I'm like, no. I'm used to the style where, okay, something happens with our characters, we do something good, but then they're supposed to go on some journey to find some themselves, because they're supposed to lose something in order to gain, some other message or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I thought that the master plan would be the overarching story that they develop into, but no. It was like, it was the, first ended in the first, 15, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. It's like, it threw me off edge, and I was like, okay, what else are we going to do,
Yeah. And I would just it was just going so quickly. And in a lot of ways, I wasn't even bothered by it. I think, and like you were mentioning too, you said that we didn't even really understand what the plan was or like why he was even doing it, like the motives.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even understand it probably until at the end of phase 2. We didn't really get it, which was interesting because we didn't really get a whole lot behind why Mr. Fox was going out to steal again. Because in the beginning we saw that he promised his wife that he wasn't going to steal, and it was just kind of weird that we didn't really see why he picked it up again.
Right, we didn't feel that need to go back.
Right, and it wasn't it wasn't told. Yeah, I feel like it was kind of shown to us by the end of the second phase, if I'm not mistaken, and it was just kind of interesting. They were like, wow, we don't really know what's happening here. We're just watching it happen and take place.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's kind of, it is kind of strange.
Yeah, it's definitely like a loop around type of storytelling, So we basically get an end part before we really know the beginning part, but somehow it still works, I think. You know?
Exactly.
It's very interesting.
It's not I don't know if I would call this movie exactly linear,
Right. Yeah. I would say so. Like I said, it's just kind of like a weird. I don't know how to describe it. I'm interested in see any inspirations on where this sort of style is, because I don't think I've seen, at least maybe in a while, right, that to give me this sort of am I okay with the way they told us? Because usually it's either okay, yes, it's really good, or no, it's not really good. And this one's kind of huh,
Yeah, it has you thinking. And I'm curious if the book is similar, where it feels kind of like we're getting one bit and we're getting this other. I wonder if it just feels as fast,
Maybe. I doubt it, because it's subjective, right? Because when you read, it's going to be however you're pacing, right? So
right.
I don't know.
I wonder, it gives such a sense of thrill and adventure, and I think it works very well for the film, and it puts you on edge because Mr. Fox and his friend Kylie, the possum, are stealing, and it just kind of it worked with the mood, with the rhythm and the scenes.
What I want to say though, since we're doing a Wes Anderson series, I think I understand his style kind of now. I'm getting a prediction.
Okay.
Because I haven't seen any of his films till now.
Right, me neither.
I've heard, really good things about him, and obviously the cinematography with everything's composition in his film,
Right.
But with I think I have a prediction right now,
Okay.
just with Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Uh-huh.
So all of his shots and his framing, they're very balanced, right? You can tell,
very symmetrical.
Yeah, very symmetrical. You can just immediately tell by looking at it, it's not your quote unquote normal movie viewing. Something's different.
Mm-hmm.
And in watching that, I think the shots are supposed to be balanced. That's where your stable storytelling, I guess, is, while the actual events are supposed to be that little crazy, little bit unordinary, so he has that leeway, so it doesn't feel wrong, because the images that he shows is very balanced,
and it gives you enough of information about the world. And for me, I kind of felt like it gave context that maybe we could use for later.
I just think somehow I think it works, because I think we naturally want to find some sort of balance. And even though we're taking on this like crazy ride, it felt somewhat balanced because of the images, which is crazy in my opinion, which is actually like a brilliant idea. And I'm like, oh, cool. This is I'm starting to predict we're gonna see a lot of that throughout.
So like you're saying like in the craziness we can always go back to the symmetry and the composition of the scenes.
Yeah, and it seems fine because
Okay.
like let's say that wasn't there. I don't think the other or the story would have worked as well because it would have been too crazy for us to even like keep up with or whatnot. But because that the visual balance was there, it felt a little bit better for satisfying for us, so we didn't like think anything too much of it, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how you feel about that. I'm like, yeah, I think that's like, oh, that's really interesting now.
I think probably like subconsciously I was feeling that, but I don't think I really in my head as I was watching, I was like, of course I was paying attention to the symmetry that was being presented in the scenes. And yes, they were really nice, but I didn't connect the idea of with all of the craziness and all of the fast pace scenes, it's that composition that brings us back to solid ground. And I didn't even think about it that way. But what I really liked about, like, I guess I felt like there was a lot of intention in the composition, obviously.
Right.
And it was clear. I think it was clear. I think of course, all films have intention, right? And the way they compose and the way they frame their shots. But what's one thing that I really caught and that I took notice of and I loved was that moment when like we skip ahead the 2 human years, the 12 fox years and the 12 years of fox years. And he's eating breakfast and we get introduced to like Ash and like kind of the family, right? And I love this moment where we get like a close up of Ash, and I think like just Ash, and then like in the corner, like in the center of the screen, we see one of those paintings that Felicity like painted, but it's like on the floor. And when I saw that glimpse of it, I was like, what is that? And what's that doing there? And then it caught my attention to the photo that was above, and I never even noticed it throughout the entire before that until I saw the scene where it was on the ground. But it felt like that was in the foreground and in the center of the frame, to make you like intentionally question like, what is that? Or at least it did for me. And I was like, oh, that was really nice because I didn't even notice it, and it was there the entire time.
Yeah, that seems like a balance thing where, you know, everything in like the middle seemed balanced, but you saw this one thing that was sticking out, because it was different from the other way. So yeah, it caught your attention, and yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. And yeah, that's what you can do with like his framing techniques. And yeah, it's just an interesting like concept. Like you said, a lot of it's actually thought through.
Oh yeah,
if you actually think about it. And yeah, I don't know. I'm still like conflicted on like on how
you feel about it.
No, it's more like I really want it to be intentional, you know?
Oh, okay.
Like, but was it really intentional? It's like it goes into like boundaries. Like, okay, should I really look into, you know, what these meanings are? Or are there no meanings at all? You know,
Okay.
It's like that question. You know,
I don't know, because I would probably have to say that it was certainly intentional because, for example, in that scene when he was eating the breakfast, did you even notice the painting that was like right above his head? Like in the background, did you even notice it at all?
I don't remember. I don't think so in like that particular scene.
And that's why I'm saying that like maybe if you even revisit this film, you would probably pick up on things that were already there, maybe in all that shot that was in the rest of the film. But that's why I thought it was smart, because like I didn't even notice the painting right above his head, but there was that small little painting on the floor, and it clearly gave something more, especially like towards the end of Felicity painting like the world map essentially, and the significance of it. But it was just something so like little and something that I could see in the frame and like question, but it wasn't something that was just like in the background. It was clearly like in the foreground. And I think that attention wanted to be brought to it. So you can ask yourself, what is that?
They obviously like you built to the idea of, you know, the painting or whatnot and everybody else's character, right? They built to the idea with the surroundings, you know, eventually or whatnot.
Right.
It's just was it an intentional idea to mess with the composition so that you would think that now or starting now?
Oh,
And that's like the question I have, you know, is it was that an intentional thing, or, oh yeah, that's just the places they're in, so let's zoom into that area. So
okay.
I think, you know, obviously it was thought out, but you know, you never really know,
Never
right?
truly know. Right.
I do have like so when it comes to like the whole overall like plots for Fantastic Mr. Fox, I think that I don't know. I think the film had character. That's one of the biggest thing I do want to say, that it has character, especially like with the, again, composition and just the style of the stop motion animation and the world around it. You know, with all the, you can tell just with the farmers, you know, when they eventually, you know, bring them all up, and there's like characters and like little I want to say tidbits on like, oh, you know, who this person is and like what this happening or whatnot. And certain scenes really like bring that out. But like on the other hand, I feel as if maybe I was too used to the story wise, where you know, when we get to certain moments, I feel like it was like, okay, what's really, you know, certain things. Like, I think certain situations worked, where others is like it kind of fell flat because we didn't build certain things. And I think this has to do with timing wise.
Okay.
Like, eventually, you know, when they go into the wine cellar, right, where they meet the rats.
Y'all are trespassing now, illegally. Around these parts, we don't take kindly to cider poachers.
You've aged badly, rat.
You're getting a little long in the tooth yourself, partner.
And I think that was a really good scene that had Western moments, vibes and moments and whatnot. And I think that worked as like, okay, somehow we transitioned into a different genre style, and it made sense when we did zoom ins to their faces to show intensity,
right,
or whatnot.
And the music too was adding to it. It was very like gunslinging,
right?
Like, you know, staring at the eye, just staring at your eyes and everything. It's like dual showdown right now.
But like, I think when the time we went to like the Thanksgiving quote unquote dinner and stuff like that,
okay, yeah,
that kind of felt like, I basically by that point,
did it feel out of place?
I think it felt out of place. Where I think like after the events of that, I don't think, maybe it's because I usually, or most films, I think we see a lot of main character I guess involvement with they're at the forefront, right? The main character usually.
Right.
And this is a thing that they technically, I want to say Dark Knight should have done, you know, where they actually focus a lot on their side characters, I think, more than Fantastic Mr. Fox, right?
Yeah. Because
I think the side with Ash and oh man, I don't know which is Christopherson. There you go. With their whole deal, I think was a bigger issue or a bigger plot thing than Mr. Fox trying to figure out, you know, his whole wild animal instinct thing. It was a big deal too, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it had his moments with his wife or whatnot, but I actually argue that some of the side characters actually like I guess, outperformed, quote unquote. I don't know what you want to say.
Christopherson's
because
natural.
because everybody had
Yeah.
like a little bit
They had their
charm.
own, yeah,
you know?
exactly. They had their own unique charm.
And I guess, seeing the first film, I would assume that Mr. Fox would be the big presence, where in reality, I think he was too good in doing his whole basically coming up with everything.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah.
He didn't really have like some sort of downside besides, he was too good at his thing, you
Yeah.
know? And that was a little weird just as watching the film for the first time, where, you usually find these character traits, the hero's journey, right?
Right.
Through your main character, but essentially you found that through other characters.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I felt like certain moments was like, okay, sure, but I felt a little displaced because, I saw it, I usually see it differently. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. I just want to bring it up that there was this displacement I felt.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of felt like it was more balanced, in my opinion. I felt like it was more balanced with Mr. Fox and Ash than the Ash and Christopherson storyline. I kind of felt like Mr. Fox was at the forefront for me, more so than Ash and Christopherson. But I thought it was a good blend of the two, but maybe you saw it differently. I think I guess I would say that like it blended well for me. I definitely would agree with you that the characters were very like at the most like the forefront because they all had their own unique characteristics and they all played into it and they were actually literally brought out towards the end, which was another interesting thing. To like point more attention to the actual individual characteristics, and it gave those characters even more like screen time and like charm because obviously Mr. Fox couldn't do everything alone. But I kind of felt like the one thing that I really enjoyed that the film did well that I like again, for me personally, I felt like everything was a blend, but I would also say that the movie felt very, and this is probably just a Wes Anderson thing, that just like the way that the comedy was approached was very like, I don't know, I don't think I would call it subtle, but I would call it more like, or maybe it is subtle. Like it just like something as simple as like distant shots, like in the very beginning when Mr. Fox is going to look at the tree. And then we could hear like the retail person, like just from the distance saying like, "Oh, hey, like here's the tree." But like, that's something that I feel like it did well with like bringing in comedy bits. But again, I kind of felt like everything was a nice blend for me personally, from between Mr. Fox and Ash and Christopherson.
I would say that with the comedy stuff, I think it had like this interesting, different approach to it compared to like,
I thought it was perfect.
Right. Especially like, when you say that first thing with the realtor, showing him the tree.
Right.
Something like that could have been done 1,000 different ways. And that way ended up being different, unique, and, not what you usually see. And that gave it like an additional bit of charm, and I do like say high praise to this film for doing those techniques or whatnot. But I guess it's like understanding just character motives, especially like we said with Mr. Fox, we don't really. You can if like I'm not saying there's nothing there, right? Because I do think if you think about it and you can piece it together, I just don't think they had enough like screen time, I guess, to really show those areas. It's more like a stage of life type of thing, that you have to implement. You got to think a little bit, quote unquote, more with Mr. Fox because he it seems to be like okay, he's aging,
right,
and once he has a kid, he has to stop his like old quote unquote ways, right? And then once he lives his life, he has this like I guess side midlife crisis type of thing, where, I want to go back to doing, what I do best, and then he basically transitions, realizes it's not a good idea.
Right.
It put his whole family and friends in danger. And, he has to basically mature, But I would say in the other realm where you have Ash and Christopherson, they had this like sibling quote unquote rivalry
Right.
where this one didn't want to fit in, or this one couldn't fit in, and this one was just everybody natural. Everybody liked him, and so it caused this whole conflict, and eventually by the end, they had this like, okay, we're okay again, and I think we because I think Ash's character growth is a lot more easier to see and a lot more different from what we saw him at the beginning, because I thought he was like a huge jerk at the beginning, but by the end he seemed like, okay, I can get behind you. Where in it's just different levels of places in their like life, where you could see that change. I would say Ash, you would see the most change, whereas in like Christopherson and Mr. Fox didn't have that much change. Just had like a realization,
Well, I guess I would consider both of their like transformations, if you will. I would probably consider them both a like an acceptance of their selves.
Right.
Because I kind of felt like Ash was just trying to, he was obviously trying to prove himself to his own family, and that's and then he realizing that it's a mixture of both. Yeah, he wants to prove himself, which isn't a bad thing, but he also needs to accept who he is as well, and he doesn't have to be like his dad.
Right.
And the Mr. Fox basically just accepting that he is the wild animal that he says he is. But
he has a job to do now.
Right. Yeah.
I would say that like it just different levels of like how much you can see and how much is visually shown to you,
Yeah.
And I personally would say that Ash had a easier and more
maybe like a more clear-cut storyline.
Yeah, maybe. I would say it's a little bit more built, because you felt like this sympathy for him a little bit too, just because he was different, right?
Yeah.
Than the others, but they're just different life stages, which is kind of interesting because there's layers to the different messages throughout the film, and like we said, like with with Dark Knight or whatnot, they had like different. They're able to essentially bring everybody up to like the same level in progression, quote unquote.
Sure.
And that's a good thing to do,
I would even go further with Mr. Fox, and it's like this, obviously with the idea of him not being able to do the thing that he's actually good at, and how devastating that could feel if you were to just relate it in general, and just having that feeling of not being able to do something that you're actually good at. And then obviously that sense of responsibility, and him being a parent, and understanding like what those responsibilities mean and everything. And I actually like how you said that, because there's both the older and the younger, and you can see it in those different layers. And it's kind of nice, because even if this is probably more geared towards like, I don't know, a kid's film,
right.
It's somewhere in that realm, not too young, but somewhere like in the middle. But it's kind of nice too, because not only can the kid relate to it, probably the parent could if they're watching it as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's a nice dynamic,
right? It's because usually, I would say usually it's like you could just make a film on just one of those aspects, but in this one they decided to go 2 or even 3 routes where you could find different I guess characters to be, and find and go with their message and get something out of it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I felt like I feel like I saw both of them, but I don't think I actually told myself that, oh, look at this. An older person could actually relate to Mr. Fox, and then a younger one could relate to Ash in his situation. And even, you can even relate to Felicity and how she must feel about the feeling of the lies, or the lie that he told, all those years ago. And that was a pretty powerful moment. That was a really good moment where she basically slapped him. She slapped Mr. Fox just with the idea of, like, why did you lie to me when you said you were going to quit stealing all those years ago? Just another, like, not only was it just a powerful moment, but great use of the animation and the stop motion. It's just so weird that you can feel that kind of sense of emotion from, like, an inanimate object, and it's not actual real people, but the tears like flow so realistically.
Totally.
Man.
Yeah, I would even say like we said, with different characters, you just feel other different things. Like you can even be in Christopherson's shoes too, where he's a natural or whatnot, and it's not really like he wanted to be this. It just so happened, and
he's like labeled this way,
right? And people might be jealous of him, but he's who he is, and just goes along his day or whatnot. And there's just different aspects, just like we say, and it's multi-layered,
Yeah, interesting. I do want to talk about the. I got to talk about the voice acting too. I felt like it was. I'm always interested to see like how voices get paired up with the images, and I almost felt like I was going to be too distracted by George Clooney being Mr. Fox.
Yeah,
and at first I was, to be honest with you. And then as I kept listening, I was like, wow, it just feels like it fits really well, especially Meryl Streep. I thought Meryl Streep's Felicity was perfect. Yeah. I felt like I wasn't even like denying it for a second. I felt like that's Felicity. That's not even Meryl Streep. That's Felicity. And I was like, wow. I thought the voice acting was just excellent in this film. So good.
Yeah, I think that like we didn't even know certain people were certain people. Like like the rat or whatnot. Like Willem Dafoe, I had no clue. You know,
it was Willem Dafoe.
Like I had no clue. It was like you knew. It was like, oh wait, no, I don't think that is.
Yeah,
it
was funny because like as we were watching it, when the rat made his appearance, I thought I heard like a touch of Willem Dafoe's, like just the way he pronounces his vowels or something. I don't know. And I was just like, that sounded like a hint like him. But then as he kept speaking, I was starting to like
deny it.
Yeah, like doubt myself. Because it was too different to almost even be him. And I was like, and then after the film, we looked it up and it was him.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's crazy.
He did a really good job, like good performance.
I would say though, just with the rat character, I'm kind of disappointed just the route they took, because I do like how he was this like villain at first, I loved his like whole dynamic. He was so
he was great.
Yeah, it's so cool in my opinion and whatnot. But like the fact that I wanted him to turn good guy, I was like, come on, man. I was like, join the fight or whatnot. But he, they still turned on each other, and then just ended up going away. It's like, oh man, that's disappointing,
But we got to talk about that emotional moment when he does, he takes his last breaths. And he's talking about that all he wanted was like the cider.
Right.
And man, when he talked about that, it tasted like gold and everything. And I love that moment. It's almost like this moment of like the humility and the, just kind of like the honesty. Because even Fox asked him if if he hadn't killed Rat, would he have told him the location of Christopherson? And Rat was like, oh yeah, no, I wouldn't have told you, like never. And it was kind of like this, in those few like moments, it almost kind of felt like this like mutual rivalry, almost kind of like Batman and Joker, where it was just kind of like these two were probably like doing this for years, destined to probably do it forever. And it's kind of like, if you don't have the yin, you don't have the yang, It's like you can't separate the two. And it felt like that these two weren't meant to be separated, but it happened anyway. And then it felt even more, but like I felt a sense of closure when Fox mentioned as he passed that like, all he's going to be now is just like a rat in the back of like a trash can in some Chinese restaurant or something. And no one's going to care. And it was like, I don't know, like those, I don't know if that was written in the actual book or that was just written for the screen, but you got the perfect sense of what he was trying to say. And it was just like made you feel bad for every rat that you've ever seen in your life or whatever. It was just so strange that like there are these things that you just never think about and then like when you get like the attention's brought to it, you're just like, man, I should really like start caring about this a little bit more. And you just felt
It gave feeling to something
Yeah.
you never give a thought to.
exactly, I couldn't say it better. And oh man, I don't know, it just hit you. It hit me so hard.
The feels right now.
Yeah, the feels exactly. Like I was like, man, am I gonna cry for Rat? Man, it was so sad. I was just like, man, this is like better than, I don't know, like the last like 3 or 4 or 5 seasons of Dexter. Oh man, it's just like, wow, this is just so emotional. It's great, and they just wrapped it all really nicely.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, disappointed to see you go.
I know.
You know.
It was weird because I almost felt like when the Rat, we mentioned this earlier, like the Rat character was like when it started introducing like that Western vibe because of like that tone of the music that was paired with Rat, which was great, and also kind of like a mix of like Spanish like flamenco or something like that, kind of like that similar like maybe tap dancing of some kind. Like Matador kind of style, like esque. It even gave that kind of vibe, which was just neat too. And yeah, then there was like other like little bits and pieces of like Western.
Even with like the duel by the end of
Yeah.
the time with the 3 farmers and whatnot,
Yeah,
it's, you know, he basically like the showdown, the whole like street
Yeah.
basically ended up, you know, hiding and barricading themselves basically like, oh, what's going to happen here or whatnot. And yeah, it was basically like another Western moment. You
yeah,
know?
because if anyone knows, I mean, the climax of any Western, like classic Western, is that there's like gun duel in the middle of the town and everyone's watching, and that's what
Right.
happened.
It's like, essentially, yeah.
And I was like, interesting. Like now it's just to become a Western film,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with this. I'm okay. It was interesting. I liked that.
Let's talk about like that wolf moment. They kept bringing up this
yeah.
wolf. Like, okay, are you afraid of wolves? Like, what wolf? You know, whatnot. Like, am I missing something here? Was this like supposed to be some sort of joke, or is this like some sort of reference to something? Like, I never really understood anything. And like, sure, we had like this funny moment by the end when he does see a wolf. But
Yeah.
like, I'm like a little bit more confused, if anything.
Well, I think it's because, you know, I think foxes and wolves are in a similar, a similar classification. They're not exactly in the same one, but I think it was just pointing attention to that the fact that they're a fox is probably a descendant from a wolf in terms of, you know, just evolution and classification of the different just distinctions for animals. And I think it was just like putting like the wolf on like this pedestal as like this magical ancient ancestor, like this being, and that's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
So I was like thinking that they were just kind of treating it as like this like ancient like brother that we haven't seen in like centuries.
Right.
And if we do see one, it's a rare sight. And the fact that he did see one and then he had that heart-to-heart moment, if we want to call it that, just raised the fist to be like, yeah, man, like we're on the same side, I guess. It was such a like out of left field moment.
Right.
I'll agree. But like in some ways, I still got all of that, like all of that from that moment and prior, before, like when they were talking about it.
It's like another storyline that he was trying to bring up
Yeah.
with no dialogue at all. You
Uh-huh.
know, it's like another like interesting. Okay, somehow we felt that this thing
Is out there.
Yeah, a divine character out there, like untouchable, and we got some sense of, wow, we passed through this. You know, I don't know what even to
Yeah, like we should
describe.
feel honored.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, I don't know.
And like, but we were even told about the wolf, like in the first phase of his master plan of Mr. Fox's master plan.
Right.
Like it was that early.
They're building
Mm-hmm.
to that later moment, and you know when we got there, you know, you were in awe somehow,
and you
know?
were still asking yourself, like, what is this?
Yeah,
What
I
is
was
this
like,
moment?
I felt a presence, but I don't know what it means.
It was really strange, but it was really. I don't think it was a bad moment. It was really good. I
Yeah.
thought, even though I didn't fully understand it, but I think if we were to, you know, take everything that we had just said, It's simply just this ancient divine presence, and we have to respect it, I suppose. It was definitely weird, but good moment. I thought like the music choices in the film were interesting too. It was like this, almost like we got like this nice like 60s vibe, in my opinion.
I felt it was like an indie, like very much like in that realm. I was like, oh, again, another interesting thing. Like you wouldn't really see that like much. I would assume. Like,
Yeah, I agree.
Accompanied with, I guess animation. You know, you'll hear like, just I don't know. You don't really associate it with, maybe a little bit more now, maybe, but like this is 2009. You wouldn't. I don't know. You wouldn't see that
like popular music in a film, or like, well, that's not exactly true, but
just that like whole vibe. Like I'm trying to think of like, if you remember like I think it was a teaser trailer to Toy Story 4. They had that like sort of like
okay,
the vibe and then the music or whatnot, and that too came out like last year or whatnot.
Yeah, like or 2019.
Yes, recently in comparison, and this one's a 2009 film. You know, I wouldn't think Toy Story would have done that in 2009 or whenever. What was 33? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You know, so it's definitely like a different step to take. When it comes to I guess movies, maybe animation. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah, because I was like, this is another unique feature like about the film was the soundtrack. Like I just felt like it worked. It worked with everything. And I feel like if it were any other film, like Toy Story, for example, kind of probably then it would have felt out of place.
Right. It helped the vibe and the charm of the world of Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Right. Man, there was a lot of really nice close-ups too. Like if we're going back to framing and composition within the scenes, and even like breaking of the fourth wall. Like where we have on the right hand side of the screen, we have like at least one character and they're talking to the camera, but not like directly at us. They're just kind of giving their own monologue, and it's still like in connection with the characters. Like I think about that moment when Christopherson had just come and Ash takes his dive into the pool. And so does Christopherson. And then like Ash is like on the right hand side and he's still talking to his dad. But he's like almost like it feels like he's talking to us because he's right there on that right hand side of the screen, just like looking off into the distance, which is us.
Right. It's like, yeah, they're very much they use the close ups when they're trying to talk to other characters. Really,
yeah,
or trying to convey some sort of emotion that needed that extra like
push.
Yeah, and. Yeah, most of the time I want to say, they're in the middle of the frame looking at us, basically.
Yeah, it was just like an interesting thing that I saw, and I guarantee you we're gonna see that kind of framing again.
Yeah,
in future Wes Anderson films, because we already saw it in some of the trailers,
right?
And I'm really interested to see how it's implemented in different types of films.
Yeah, my biggest one is with people, like actual live action people. You know, it's not animated. Like animated, I think you have a little bit more leeway when it comes to like, because it adds that like charm to the world. But since it's real people, you know, we see how we see, and we don't see in those perfectly symmetrical frames. And I wonder if it's gonna feel a little bit odd. When it's with people, or if it's going to work as well with animated.
Right. Possibly might. So overall, how'd you feel about Fantastic Mr. Fox?
It was short. I think it did really well in describing the world. Like I could see its world building is, I could see a whole
fantastic.
It's fantastic. I could see a whole nother, it could at least win another hour, I think. With it, I just felt character, charm. I felt people really, they were connectable, I guess. And, but I would say like what's lacking is like, your traditional, hero's journey style, pacing wise, and really by the end you feel fulfilled, because you could be questioning. It's like 2001, where they kind of went experimental. And by like the later half, it's not. I wouldn't say it's like broken down in Fantastic Mr. Fox the exact same way.
Sure.
But it's very experimental in its storytelling if you're not used to that style of telling.
Right, yeah.
So you might be thrown for a loop if you not expecting it.
And especially like if you're used to that kind of storytelling like
Right.
you are, how you said. In my opinion, I also agree. I thought it was short, but I thought that it included a lot of great moments, like so many moments, like I said, because they almost like crammed all of these things in such a short amount of time, and it felt longer because of that, because we went through this moment like of like 3 different phases of his original master plan, and then the Ash and Christopherson getting captured, and then a whole like dual like showdown happening. So a lot of like different kinds and types of scenes, and I felt like it was longer than the hour and 27 minutes it was. Really love the attention to like the world. Obviously it's fantastic. Love the difference between like the animals like location is a distinct, like there's so much like color, so much orange obviously,
Right.
and apart from like the farms of Bogus, Bean, and Bunce.
Yeah, Bunce and Bean.
Yeah, Bunce and Bean. They're like it's all like gray. It's colorless. I like thinking about that. Like their what they wear is kind of like dull and monotonous and lifeless. And I really love that like dynamic and that contrast of the characters, and we could see like how different they are. There's like intensity, like moments in this film. There's great comedic like details and like touches,
Right.
even like awkward moments where like you feel like a scene isn't gonna end, and then it just abruptly ends with an okay,
Yeah.
and it's like okay, on to the next scene.
I was like, I need more context or something.
Right.
You know?
And I kind of liked it though, because like you're in your head, you're expecting more, and it just kind of ends there, and it's kind of okay because you have to be
Somewhere else.
you
I
have to be
guess.
somewhere else
Yeah.
already. So for me, I really enjoyed that fast pace, and like the details that it pays attention to. It's a clever film, and definitely a good start to what Wes Anderson can bring to the table.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and so there we have it. Wes Anderson's, oh man, what was it? The stop motion animation comedy. Fantastic Mr. Fox. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. I really wish we watched this movie when it came out. I remember hearing of it. And
I don't think we would have appreciated it as well. I don't think, but because it's 2009, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a different year. It was a
Yeah.
different kind of year for us. So,
Right.
but definitely check it out. And hopefully you enjoyed listening to this episode. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The End Credits. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The End Credits Podcast, and over on Twitter at The End Credits. If you're watching the video version, make sure to subscribe to the End Credits YouTube channel. That's it. Thank you and goodbye.